Hello, everyone, and welcome to Triangle of Fence. This is Monish. As always, I'm joined by Nishant. It's almost the end of the week, which means that we are now less than 3 weeks away from the start of the NBA season. A lot of teams will begin the season with an entirely different roster. A lot of teams will see new coaches managing their teams. On today's episode, we'll talk about the coaches, we'll talk about the new coaches, in fact, and we'll talk about the challenges that they will encounter in the new franchises. Hey, Nishant, what's up? One more day closer to the start of the season. No big news coming out yesterday. I was expecting another John Wall, Russell Westbrook trade, but that didn't seem
Yeah,
to happen.
no more watch
Uh,
bombs.
no more Verge bombs. Yes, exactly. But a lot of new teams, a lot of new coaches. Like
Yeah,
exactly, there are like 9 coaches
yeah.
who have shifted teams.
hmm
That's quite a change. That's almost like 30% of all the franchises changing.
Yeah, it's been crazy. And it's not just the coaches, right? Think of all the backcourt changes that have happened
Hmm.
across the league. There's just so many guards that are floating around. Like
Yeah.
Rondo, Chris Paul, this, that, and the other, Westbrook, John Wall, blah, blah, blah. It's a guards market right now. And there are no wings, which is why Gordon Hayward went for such a premium. Because who else have you got really? Because there's Kawhi, Gordon Hayward, who's really available as a wing in the market. So
Yeah.
yeah, but what the coaches thing is pretty crazy. Um, some great opportunities for
Hmm.
erstwhile assistant coaches. Some kind of weird moves. The whole Brooklyn Nets setup, and I know we'll go deep into that, but first time coach, great player, but first time coach managing all of those superstars, putting together, that's a challenge. And then he's got quite the support crew in his former teammate. So Steve Nash is the head coach, right? And his former
Yep.
teammate Amari Stoudemire, he's got him for support. But also, oddly enough, D'Antoni, who coached Steve Nash and Stoudemire in that amazing Phoenix Suns unit, which was all offense, no defense, typical D'Antoni, and then didn't really achieve anything. But now he is assistant to Steve Nash, who's never coached in his life, only in the NBA.
Absolutely, and that is the first team I actually wanted to touch up on, the Brooklyn Nets and Steve Nash.
Right.
And uh, he has a lot more challenges apart from. I know he has a good support cast, and we'll come to that. But first of all, you got to manage Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, two of the top, maybe top 10 players in the league.
Yeah.
Amazing players, but with them comes a lot of drama, and we've seen that with Kyrie Irving a bunch of times. With KD, I would say he's still not as bad, but great player. He's coming back from injury, lot to prove. Hopefully he'll remain the same player. Kyrie Irving also returning from injury, lot to prove again. But the challenges there is not just managing the team, but to managing these two egos or
Yeah.
attitudes or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Yeah. We've seen this go terribly wrong with the Clippers. When you put together an amazing squad. So basically what you do is you take a playoff team, and in the Clippers case, that was a very good playoff team.
Hmm.
And you drop into superstars. And now all of a sudden, what happens with superstars in any franchise? They get a lot of perks, they get a lot of special attention, they get cut some more slack, which isn't afforded to some of the lesser known players on the team. And it's really then upon the superstar to either act like he merits it and lead by example, or decide to cut back on those perks until they fit in. And we saw two great examples of that, right? LeBron James chose to stay in a mere mortal suite in the bubble
Hmm.
because he didn't
Hmm.
want to separate himself from the wolf pack that much. He wanted to be one with the guys, right? You see this even in the NFL with Tom Brady. He goes to a new franchise for the first time in his life, and he
Hmm.
says, "I'm Tom Brady, 6 out of 9 in the Super Bowls and all of that, but it doesn't matter. In the box, I'm the new guy. So I need to
Hmm.
come here and show them I'm all about that." And that's leadership. And that's something Kawhi absolutely failed to display. He's not the first superstar to get those kind of perks. Living in San Diego, flying in for practice. Kobe used to do that his entire life. He
Hmm.
used to chop it up and down, right? But Kobe earned it. And another thing, he never, I don't think he ever made the team plane wait. Kawhi apparently did it a bunch of times because he had a long commute and whatever. So we've seen these go terribly wrong. With the Clippers, that was the case. When you drop in two mega egos into an already pretty well set team, how do you get it all together? How do you tie that together? Because not only are there going to be perks and pay differences, now you're going to have somebody like a Dinwiddie whose role is going to maybe get diminished. Because I
Yep.
don't see him start. What's the point of starting Dinwiddie when you've got Kyrie and Durant? Is he even going to get the ball? You can start him, sure, but is he going to see the ball much? No, not really. So he may be coming. He might be coming off the bench. Karis LeVert gets fewer touches. His development is probably hampered. And then there's that whole Jarrett Allen, DeAndre Jordan. How do they mesh in with Kyrie and KD? Are we going to see the same level of defense from KD? If not, is it that he's going to do his best within whatever fitness is available to him, or is it that he's going to get cut some slack and load management, which may or may not go down well with the guys? Now, in all of this, there are two key factors that pull things through. One, leadership. It's what you see from LeBron James. It's what you see from Dwayne Wade that you saw in the past. You see it from Kobe, Jordan, all of these guys. Your alpha, if he can bring the team together with perks, without perks, whatever, that's on the leader. If he can bring the team together and make it work, that goes a long way. And then, of course, the coach. He's got to have the respect of the locker room. And in some cases, he's got to hold the superstar accountable too, which is what all great coaches do. Why is Ty Lue so beloved in the league? Because he has this image of standing up to the big guy. Like he coached LeBron, Kevin Love, Kyrie, and all of those Cavs unit. And he held everyone accountable, right? Now, is that something Steve Nash is going to do? He's led a team before. I don't know if he's been that alpha dog before, though. I don't think he was ever in a team where he was expected to be that guy, and never on a championship team anyway. When he was on the Mavs, it was Nowitzki, and then when he was on the Suns, that was a D'Antoni team. It was all defense, all offense, no defense, right? So I'm concerned because Kyrie is a handful. He goes off saying all of the wrong things all the time. He's a flat earther. I don't know what he keeps talking about half the time. He, in the middle of the BLM movement, he comes off, goes on a tangent, and then kind of leaves that halfway through and just goes and chills with Kevin Durant on a podcast. He's not the easiest guy to integrate into a team setup. And he's a high usage player, so that's not going to go down well with some of the other guys. In all of this, I'm looking at two things. Who's their alpha? Who's their leader that binds all this together? Can he get Kyrie to look at him and acknowledge that he's the alpha? Because if not, and you've got a dual leadership situation, that's a problem. That's problem number one. Because Kyrie was number 2 to LeBron, and he didn't take that well, and that's LeBron.
Right.
Kevin Durant, largely the same thing for Kyrie, right? Maybe their friendship comes in handy there. But what about the other guys? Do they look at these two superstars the way the Clippers squad looked at Kawhi and PG? That's on the coach. Not sure they have the right coaching setup to handle this. I'll be surprised though if Steve Nash pulls it off. But hey, we don't know that he can do it. We don't know that he can't. So it's a clean slate for Steve Nash.
Totally. I think the expectation for Brooklyn Nets is if anything less than a NBA finals or maybe a conference finals even, it's considered a failure because with these two superstars, you really need to make the cut or else there's no rebuilding and whatnot in the season for the Nets, right? All right. So that was Steve Nash. I want to move on quickly to Ty Lue because you mentioned him. And he'll be taking on from Doc Rivers at the Clippers. Now, he was already at the Clippers when they crashed and burned against the Denver Nuggets. He was the assistant coach. So he's seen all of the team. He's seen what works for them, what doesn't work for them. But what is a fresh perspective that he'll bring to the Clippers that Doc Rivers couldn't?
I think the biggest thing is what you just mentioned, that he was there, he watched it all crash and burn. So there's that power of retrospect. What could I have done differently? I'm sure he's thought that through. Doc Rivers had a spectacular assistant coaching unit, right? Sam Cassell, Ty Lue, both highly respected, much like the Lakers assistant duo. Now with Ty Lue, first of all, he's coached a championship team before, so he knows how this is done. At some level, he knows how this is done, and he's coached a star-studded, kind of multi-starter unit before in LeBron's Cavs with Kyrie and Kevin Love and all of those guys, Shumpert, the whole 9 yards. So, and he has this kind of tough guy image. We're already hearing talk of he's going to hold Kawhi and PG accountable. He's going to ask them to cut back on some of those perks because the kind of stuff that's coming out is ridiculous. The kind of perks that were given and afforded to these two stars. They would decide when to have practice, when not to have practice. They would pick and choose games where they didn't want to play. They would pick and choose periods in the game where they want to come out, rest, come back in. I mean, you can't run a team like that, right? I don't know how Doc Rivers allowed that to happen because Doc Rivers did a mighty fine job of holding it together in that Boston locker room. And that's not easy. Like the stories you've heard of Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, nobody has a clean mouth there. Rondo, those are not easy characters to manage. So it's kind of shocking that Doc Rivers let all of this fly. Maybe it was Steve Ballmer, maybe it was pressure from the top. I don't know, because they seem to be obsessed with Kawhi. Now, Ty Lue, if he doesn't allow that to happen, if there's going to be superstars and then there's going to be the other guys, that's true of any franchise. But if he can keep that together, if he can keep the team together and not have like a Harrell or Lou Williams sort of situation, I think they might want to ship Lou Williams out because it's a fit issue for them now. If he can do that, like I said, that's still you have Kawhi and Paul George. That's still a pretty phenomenal team in the regular season. And if PG doesn't choke in the postseason, Kawhi is going to show up. That's a formidable team. But it's all down to personnel and rotation and man management, because they have the talent to go do it on the floor. Even with their now shallow squad, they have enough talent to go do it on the floor in the regular season. The challenges in the postseason, is this all going to fall apart like last year, or is Tyloo going to be able to do it? I wouldn't bet against Tyloo. I actually think he's a better coach, man management wise, than Doc Rivers. So I wouldn't bet against him, but it remains to be seen. It's not an easy project by any stretch. Paul George, for me, is a way overrated superstar. It's always everyone's at fault except Paul George.
Well,
so is he going to be able to hold him accountable?
Right. Paul George is going out loud and talking about how Doc Rivers' style of play didn't suit him. He was using him like a JJ Redick and use him for 3-pointers and all of that. And he says that he has a more versatile game and would like to do a lot
he
more
hit
in
the fucking
game.
sideboard in a Game 7 deciding moment. What the and by the way, I didn't hear Paul George having any problems with the adjustments when they were 3-1 up in the series, right? And then games 5, 6, 7, each of those games they went into the second half with big double-digit leads and blew it.
Right.
They didn't just blow a 3-1 lead; they blew it in style. And with our man hitting the sideboard, the fuck is he talking about?
So yeah, like you said, I think there is no problem with the talent that is there in Clippers, but I think the problem is with utilizing the talent properly and getting the best out of those players, because we all know that Kawhi is going to show up. Whichever team he plays for, he's going to show up. He's going to be the lead player. He's going to turn it on and bring in the points and bring in some games as well. The problem is with the rest of the team. Paul George, like you said, Lou Williams, if he's going to remain there. They have now Ibaka, who I think adds a certain value and experience to the team. He's also done it with Kawhi before, so that could actually help them. And
that's a big time signing.
has a big task on hand. What will be considered a success for Clippers this season? Is it going to win the chip alone? What if they reach the NBA final and don't win it? Will that be considered a failure?
If they get to the finals, if it's closely fought, maybe you can make some excuses, and then Paul George, of course, is going to say it's everyone's fault but his. If they don't even get there, for me, actually, it is chip or nothing. But if they can't even get to the Western Conference Final, this team is a joke. Kawhi and Paul George should use their player options at the end of the season, and they should just disband. Am I being harsh? No. Kawhi Leonard made demands. He threatened the Clippers and Steve Ballmer and said, "Get me Paul George. I want this guy." And I know he reached out to. There were reports of him reaching out to Kevin Durant and Kyrie and a bunch of guys, and ultimately he settled on Paul George. And he said, "Get me Paul George." Now, if Kawhi would have said, "If you don't get me Paul George, I might not join the Clippers," Clippers would have been like, "All right, we'll see." If you would have said, "If you don't get me Paul George, then I'm good at Toronto. I'll wait and play my contract out," I think that would have been fine. But the threat looming large was Kawhi played the field, and he kept letting the rumor grow that he might join the Lakers. Right? Till the last moment, that is what. So the Clippers had to act. So they gave up a bunch of picks. They traded a bunch of players to bring in Mr. Pandemic P, who stunk it up in the bubble and hit the sideboard of a 3, for fuck's sake. When you give up your entire future to invest in the now, to bring in Paul George because your superstar Kawhi Leonard demanded it, it's got to be the chip or nothing. Why would you trade away your future if your present doesn't involve a championship? What franchise does that? It's the same thing I have with the Rockets, right? That's why I keep saying James Harden's got to be held accountable. How many superstars is he going to request before we realize maybe this guy is the problem? Like, he's a great player and everything, but championship team, maybe this guy is the problem. It's the same thing with Kawhi. Now, Houston had to give up a whole host of talent picks, draft, trade, blah, 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 all of that. Why? To land Westbrook. Why did it get them? 1 year of misery, and then Westbrook wants out. It's a bit like that with the Clippers. So it's chip or nothing for me. But if they get to the finals, it's closely fought, whatever. Okay, maybe.
All right. So that is the Clippers. And since we spoke about Doc Rivers, let's jump onto him next. The minute he got fired from Clippers, Philadelphia jumped to the occasion. They hired him right away. They got what has Doc Rivers done to warrant this kind of reputation? Right, he's won a title, but that was way back in 2008. And since then, I remember him choking with the Clippers. He didn't really. He made them the Lob City Clippers and whatnot, but never really got it done. At the Clip, now with the new team with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, They were the runaway favorites at the start of the season.
Oh,
Even
absolutely.
when the bubble began, they were the runaway favorites just because we
Right.
thought that Lakers was all LeBron and AD and nobody else. But they choked. They choked after being 3-1 up against Denver Nuggets. So what
Right.
has Doc Rivers really done to garner his reputation of being a top coach?
Well, I mean, he's
And
won the chip, and he's won the
that
chip
was like
without
12 years
LeBron
ago.
James. I think that's like the two things. Yeah, go for it. Sorry.
No, so why this reputation of Doc Rivers, and what will he bring to the 76ers that the previous managers couldn't? Is he the guy to lead the process to its main event and finally win them a title and whatnot?
Yeah, I'll keep this short because it looks like we're running out of time. But here's two phases to that answer, right? One, what is Doc Rivers done to merit this reputation? By the way, I'm a little biased against him. I think he's
Mm-hmm,
overrated, but
mm-hmm,
not as an elite coach, but as the coach, like the man in the league who's going to deliver a chip. I think he's not that, right?
mm-hmm.
With a good coach, a good team, yes. But what he's done really is, for too long the NBA has basically been a game of whoever comes out of the Western Conference wins the league. And if somebody from the East has to win it, it's got to be LeBron. That's
Mm-hmm.
pretty much the narrative in the NBA. Toronto was a massive aberration. And
Right.
minus those two big injuries to KD and Clay, it won't even have been close. Like
Mm-hmm.
PSW in 5 at best. So he in all of this in the last 2 decades, he delivered a chip from the Eastern Conference on a team that didn't have LeBron James. I think that's pretty much his claim to fame, right? Now, what has he done before and after? He's the only coach that I can remember that blew 2-3-1 leads in the playoffs.
Yep. Yep.
The only guy to ever do it. He also Lob City. I also think he gets a little too much credit for the Lob City Clippers, because when D'Antoni made those Suns teams play like that with Stoudemire and Marion and Nash and all of those guys, that was D'Antoni's offense. You see that
Mm-hmm.
replicated team in, team out. You see that part of that in the Rockets in a different manifests itself in a different way. With the Clippers, I don't think that's all Doc Rivers, honestly, because when you've got Chris Paul and his IQ and his playmaking ability, and when you've got the vertical ability of a Blake Griffin and a DeAndre Jordan, the hell else are you going to do other than lob the ball, right? So I don't like right now. Would you give the Pelicans coaching staff credit for turning them into that team where Lonzo's throwing lobs from full court for fun to Zion? When you've got somebody with Lonzo's passing ability and when you've got someone with Zion's athletic ability, what the hell else is going to happen? They'll throw lobs for fun. I think he gets a little too much credit for that, and that team should have won a chip, at least gone to the finals. I don't remember if they even made it to the Western Conference Finals, the Clippers. So Doc Rivers is way overrated for me, and that one chip that he won, big achievement, no doubt, and he was great. Don't get
Mm-hmm.
me wrong, but he had Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, Rajon Rondo, a very young Rondo, sure, but Rondo and Kevin Garnett. I mean, come on. So
Yeah.
jury's still out. Now Philadelphia getting him, I think, is a great move. I think they made two super smart moves. Doc Rivers, whatever he is and isn't, is a great coach.
Mm-hmm.
Court strategy wise, tactically, all of that, he's great. Manpower management, but let's see. Now,
Okay.
Daryl Morey for me is a more impressive signing. Houston should
Mm-hmm.
have done everything to keep him, regardless of the results. It's not on him.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, if Philadelphia got Daryl Morey, watch the kind of moves they make. They've already made waves in the market, and this is just year one. Watch what they do
Right.
next season. I think he's one of the most competent GMs around, and great to have in the front office. So that's a bigger move, but I think Philly made two very smart moves.
Right. I think this biggest challenge is going to figure out a way where Ben Simmons
Yeah,
and Joel Embiid can both thrive and compete and win games for you, right?
yeah. I
And
still
that is
feel one of
what.
them is going to go. Maybe not this season, but I don't see a scenario where they don't trade one of those guys.
All right, that's a prediction for 76, and I think that's fair as well. And we spoke
Right.
all about that in
Yeah.
length. So we'll jump straight away into the Houston Rockets since you mentioned that. Steven Silas, an inexperienced coach, he was the assistant coach at the Mavs. But the challenges that are presented to him at Rockets is one that even an experienced coach would struggle with, right? You have your face of the franchise, James Harden, who's saying that he wants to go and play with Kevin Durant.
Who's saying he doesn't want that 2-year, $100 million contract?
Yeah, who's rejecting actually $100 million contract, the biggest payday in NBA history.
Yeah.
He had Russell Westbrook, who just went, and they replaced him with John Wall, who hasn't played in 2 years.
Yeah.
They have a center called PJ Tucker. Well, they replaced him.
Yeah, they
They're
got
still there. They
Cousins.
got two other centers. They got Christian Wood and they got DeMarcus Cousins. And they played the entire small ball, whatever
Yeah.
you call it, the gimmick
Debacle.
last in the bubble last season.
Yeah.
Now you got in two centers.
Hmm.
So the challenges that are present to him are incredible, because this is something that even an experienced coach would struggle with, because they don't have a future, they don't have any draft picks for the future. They've got to build around a team that
Yeah.
exists right now, but
Yeah.
you can't even build because you can't trade anyone.
Yeah, look, first, I love it when assistant coaches that have put in time, that have paid their
Mm-hmm.
dues, get a break. Right, that's the
Of
best
course.
thing about the league or any professional sporting setup. Really
Mm-hmm.
is when assistants that have put in the time get their shot at greatness. So
Mm-hmm.
can't complain, right? Any
Of
any
course.
first team opportunity. Now with the Rockets, on paper, their starting five is good. Is John Wall, James Harden, Eric Gordon, if he's not in the hospital, is going to start at the number 3. And if not Gordon, it's going to be Tucker, finally
Mm-hmm.
relieved to play in a position that's kind to his size.
Mm-hmm.
Then they've got the 4 and the 5. If Wood, I guess they can play Wood at the 4 and Boogie Cousins at the 5. Now, here's where it all falls apart. A, they don't have any bench strength worth mentioning.
Yep.
B, Eric Gordon's going to be in the hospital. John Wall's probably
Mm-hmm.
going to keep him company. DeMarcus Cousins is either going to be in the hospital or in a courtroom, defending those multitude of cases that are against him. And I'm oversimplifying things, but none of these guys have been reliable in terms of long-term availability over the last 2-3 years. John Wall's coming off of 2 catastrophic injuries, Achilles and the ACL. I forget the order, but both.
Mm-hmm.
DeMarcus Cousins, bunch of injuries, court cases. It's just not a good feel around him. I love the guy as a player, but it's just not a very good fit. And then Eric Gordon's perennially an injury concern. And you have your superstar, your franchise marquee, who basically got another version of Russell Westbrook, maybe a less fitter one, because they're literally the same player. Maybe John Wall's a little less effective, maybe a little more willing to pass the ball. That's pretty much the only difference. Like when Westbrook passes it, it's for stat pad. John Wall is because he can do it and he is willing to be a passer, right? That's the only difference. I still don't think Harden wants to stay. We still might see a Woj bomb that he's traded here, there, or somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Because why? If you're going to stay, why in the world would you say no to a 2-year, $100 million contract? There's no way you decline that if you're not already in talks with somebody else. So they might still lose Harden. If they do lose Harden, I'd actually be happy for Silas. Because now there's that much less pressure. With Harden around, it's always going to be, he's missed the chip so many years, can you get him to the finals?
Right.
With Harden out, they can make a deep playoff run. Let's see where it goes from there, right? And depends on who they get in return for Harden. If they land Kyrie, wow, that's going to be a circus. But if they land somebody else, let's see how it goes, right? But if they land Ben Simmons, that's a great move. They can start building around him,
Right.
and straight away make the playoffs also. So I think Harden's on his way out. I don't see a future where you say no to a 50 million plus per year contract and you still stick around, right? So that's on the cards. And if that happens, I'd be really happy for Silas, because not only does he have the opportunity of a lifetime at a storied, pretty famous franchise, well set, big market where players will want to come in free agency. And if Harden's going, they're going to get a ton of stuff in return. So they're already well set to build, right? So I wouldn't envy his position at all. With Harden, it's a lot of toxic pressure on him.
So, what is the expectation for Houston Rockets? Do they make the playoffs, and that's considered objective achieved, or it's like not this season? We don't care about the season; it's the future that we care about.
No, if it's the future, trade Harden, right? What are you keeping him around for? He's in his last few years, and you're not going to get much for him later. Might as well trade him now, and he wants out anyway, right? So if they're keeping Harden, it's got to be the chip or nothing. Sadly, that's how it's going to be seen. With James Harden, it's the chip or nothing. That's the standard that Kobe was held to, Tim Duncan was held to, Dwayne Wade, LeBron James. Why should it be any different for Harden if he's that guy? So it's chip or nothing. If they want to build for the future, get rid of Harden. Clearly, he wants out. You're going to get a ton of value for him in return now, versus anything you'll get 2 years down the line, where he's probably missed the finals another 2 times and diminished a bit as a player because of, father time. So there's too much dissonance here. If I were the Houston Rockets, I'd trade James Harden out.
All right. So those were the 4 big teams that I wanted to talk about in detail. Steve Nash at the Nets, Ty Lue at the Clippers, Doc Rivers at the 76ers, and Silas at the Rockets.
Right.
There are also a bunch of other smaller moves or
Mhm.
coaches moving to smaller teams, and some of them I would like to quickly brush through is one is Nate Bjorken, who's moved to the Indiana Pacers. Now, Bjorken was an assistant to Toronto Raptors at the Toronto Raptors to Nick Nurse, right? And Nick Nurse
Right.
is highly reputed as a brilliant coach, as an
Yeah.
exceptional coach. He's won
Yeah.
them the coach and he's won them the chip and all of that. But with Nick Nurse, he had Kawhi Leonard at his disposal to win that. And this guy Bjorken has Victor Oladipo.
Mhm.
So, I actually like the Indiana Pacers team. I was looking at the team, and they have a pretty good team. So I think his
Yeah.
work is cut out there, and nobody expects a chip from Indiana Pacers. So that pressure
Exactly.
is removed.
Yeah, exactly.
So
And in that East, with KD and Kyrie and all of that happening, and Philadelphia
right.
beefing up, and Miami and Boston, there's so much happening there, including
Mm-hmm.
Toronto, that it's fine if these guys make it to the playoffs and maybe get to the second round, right? An improvement over
Right.
last season. And they have a good thing going there. And it's exciting to see what TJ Warren can become outside of the bubble.
Yep.
Oladipo, it remains to be seen what version of Oladipo we get this season. But the
Right.
pressure is not going to be as much. Also, Nick Nurse, yes, the chip came with Kawhi, and even then it came with a bunch of conditions because two superstars got injured on that Warriors team. There's no way they're taking them past 5 games otherwise. But even before Kawhi landed there, that was already a number 1 seed in the East. They
Right.
regularly went to the Eastern Conference Finals to get whooped by whichever team LeBron was on.
Right.
And even after Kawhi, they finished second last season in the regular season.
Yep.
Nick Nurse
Yep.
is no slouch. There are very few coaches that get better out of lesser talent
Mm-hmm.
available than Nick Nurse. So if the assistant has learned anything under him,
Mm-hmm.
I think he'll do fine at Indiana. And they don't
Right.
have that superstar situation anymore. Oladipo, while he might think he's Michael Jordan, doesn't be. Work ethic wise, it's not like we've heard anything negative against him. And same goes for Miles Turner, same goes for Sabonis, same goes for TJ Warren. I
TJ
keep
Warren.
blanking on his name for some reason. But yeah, we've not really heard any locker room issues there. So that's not a problem. And the rotations are sorted and they're okay with the roles. There's a lot you can do. And I'm excited to see what Nick Nurse's protege can achieve in the league.
Yeah, and the one advantage for Indiana Pacers that I think they got their entire roster back, and I
Yeah.
think that is one team which has got back everyone. They've
Yeah,
not
it's a stable
traded for-
squad. Yes, correct.
So that really helps going into the new season with a new coach
Agreed.
leading them. Bunch of other coaches that I wanted to quickly brush across. Van Gundy at the Pelicans, a young unit developing there. So a big challenge for him, not in terms of winning a chip, but in developing the likes of Lonzo Ball, Zion
Yeah.
Williamson, Brandon Ingram. Bunch of stuff to do there.
I'd have loved to see D'Antoni not waste his time in Brooklyn as an assistant, but actually go coach Pelicans. Nobody's expecting Pelicans to win the chip. So, but everyone is expecting them to play box office exciting basketball. Who better than D'Antoni to play not accountable for results, but exciting basketball? D'Antoni is the man in the league. I would have loved to see him at the Pelicans. But Van Gundy is a great coach, good mentor to all of the
Mhm.
young talent that they have. So that's a pretty exciting appointment. What was the other one that you had mentioned?
A bunch of irrelevant teams. Chicago Bulls got in Billy Donovan, who actually has made 5 playoffs in the last 5 seasons with the OKC. So good
well,
coach, but I don't
welcome
know
to
what
Chicago.
Chicago are going to do. Also,
Nothing.
given the fact that they didn't make the playoffs and they retained their entire team as well. So what are they improved on?
Yeah,
Nothing really.
they do well just to hold on to Zach LaVine and get him motivated to play. I think that's the biggest challenge right now. And Zach LaVine is their best player, which is not really the making of a deep playoff team.
Right. Of course, you can't put Lavine, Kobe White, and Markkanen and make
Yeah.
them another last dance, right?
No, not even close.
The other two teams that I want to talk about is Thibodeau at New York Knicks. I don't know what New York Knicks
Why
are
are we
doing,
talking
but they're
about the
not.
Knicks?
Yeah, why are we talking about the Knicks? And
Yeah.
the OKC because they don't even have players.
Yeah, OKC are going to kill it in the draft. Can't wait for the draft to roll around. I don't know if they're going to play in the season, but they're going to kill it in the draft.
Yeah, so those are the new coaches. There were 9 of them to keep
Yeah.
account. Tough keeping account because I've never seen so many coaches move around. But it was nice discussing these challenges with you. I think we are just about right on time. So
Yeah, we are.
and until we talk again, have a good time, have a nice weekend, and we'll catch up on Monday.
Cheers. Thank you for tuning in. Happy weekend, guys.